Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the CEBL Show, the official podcast of the Canadian Elite Basketball League. I am your host, Sean Woodley, joined by my co-host, Amy Audibert, who I'm surprised is here because Amy seems far too famous now to be hanging out with the little people like me after your wonderful turn on TSN for the Raptors Nuggets game last week. Amy, how does it feel to be a freaking superstar? You killed it.
Sean, you better stop. Not at all. In the typical freelance grind, I'm happy to be chatting with you. Anytime someone calls, I'm available right now. But it was an incredible experience. You know, you do get a little bit of reflection time, and I feel very grateful. Obviously, a lot of people, John Wiggins with the Toronto Raptors, TSN, MLSE, was a lot of closed door meetings before they even made the call to us, to see if this is something that could work, to see if they could pull the right women to make it work. And I'm proud of the product. I keep saying I'm so grateful that the Toronto Raptors played a great game against the Denver Nuggets.
You were there for the only good game of the last month.
Everyone keeps saying, what are you going to remember most? And I keep saying, honest. Kate Burness and Kayla Gray they were tremendous to share that stage with. They were so accommodating. And from my first time in the studio, they were amazing. The entire production team at TSN, Channel 9 was amazing. And then the Raptors, the way they played, it was just kind of like this weird poetic night. We really did. I think everyone did think it was Kyle's last game, and they played well. Like it was really an entire package. It wasn't about me. It was about the kind of looking at it from a distance, just a wonderful evening. So,
without a doubt, the highlight of the Raptors season. And I've watched the Raptors season in painstaking detail as a man who does a daily podcast on the team. I'm certain that that's going to go down as the high point. It was awesome. You guys were amazing. It wasn't even surprising that you were amazing because you're all amazing at your jobs. It was just great to see you all get the shot to do it, and hopefully we see more of it. Anyway, we got CEBL stuff to talk about today, Amy. Coming up later in the show, we're going to be joined by our pal Jevohn Shepherd, who is now graduated from the broadcaster ranks and is now the GM of the Ottawa BlackJacks, making moves over there. We'll talk to him, or we already recorded the interview as we record this. We know what we talked about. We talked about Junior Cadogan. We talked about his beloved Michigan Wolverines losing in the Elite Eight. We talked about so much to do with Shep's new gig as the head of the Ottawa BlackJacks operation. So that's coming up in just a few minutes, but we do have some news from around the league to get into, Amy. I guess some news that's coming out today that is probably important to note. The USports Draft is back this year. Of course, they did it last year, and it is back once again this time around. We talked with Jevohn a little bit about it. We'll get some more details on it coming up later. But April 14th, same idea as before, drafting USports players to these CEBL teams, part of the CEBL USports partnership. And it's a big deal. I mean, we saw a lot of these guys end up being very effective players last year in the CEBL Summer Series. We saw Lloyd Pandy, I believe, was USports Player of the Year, came in as an emergency replacement on that team after, I believe, losing Phil Scrubb. I think that was what incited Lloyd Pandy showing up, and he was awesome for Ottawa. You had Sasha Kapos, who's back with Edmonton this year after a good turn last season. You had, there's other guys too that we talked about before. Rashawn Brown, that's the one.
Yes, it was their starting point guard. This is a huge, the draft is something that the USports Draft is not just like a kind gesture. These GMs take this very seriously because we've seen, especially last year, these guys are coming in and making immediate impacts. I don't want to say feel bad, but I feel empathetic for the GMs because they haven't been able to evaluate these guys. They didn't have a season. So that's got to be extremely challenging. But Jevohn, he's got his staff where he has USport coaches. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what better opinion you can get than the guys who are actually, it's their job to usually scout these guys and game plan these guys. And so I think it's a big deal. And I know that the players that are at least in these conversations have got to be pumped up because they get to go play. They finally might get their name called where they're in training camp, they're with the team and they get to go play. That has got to be extremely exciting for these USport guys.
Yeah, it's been nearly 13 months since we saw a USports game go down. And so, I don't envy the scouting departments who have to go back and find old USports TV footage of these guys from previous seasons. But again, always a wonderful opportunity and a great partnership, and just continues the pipeline that the CEBL is really trying to sort of nourish here. for talent, not just among, pros, but also guys who have not yet made the pros. Few signings we should probably get to here, Amy. We did mention Junior Cadogan. He has recently signed with the Ottawa BlackJacks. Maybe the biggest move, biggest name to change teams in the last couple of weeks since last we spoke to Robert Sacre 2 weeks ago. Any other moves, or you can talk about Cadogan if you want. Any moves kind of come to you as sort of, oh yeah, I'm thinking about that one. That's a pretty big move.
Yeah, Mami Dwara.
Yeah,
from the reigning champs, the Edmonton Stingers, to I'd say maybe one of their kind of bigger rivals in Saskatchewan out west. It's interesting because you've seen a couple guys now. Travis Daniels was the other big one, right? Also did the same thing. Edmonton Stingers to Saskatchewan. Guess what game I have circled on my calendar for this upcoming season?
Yeah.
So that one definitely caught my eyes as well. But some good signings. The River Lions just announced this morning, I believe, Jevohn Shepherd out of Duke.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the league needs, right? These big names coming out of big programs that are coming to play professional basketball north of the border. I mean, it's so exciting for the league. So I'd say those are kind of the bigger ones. A couple shifts in teams and then a couple signings. I mean, this is very healthy for the league. This is what we want.
Yeah, absolutely. The drama of teams picking up players from other teams, it's the beauty of it. And we talked about it with Jevohn coming up too, not to keep teasing the interview, but it's a great interview. You should stick around for it. But we talked about sort of like the insular nature of the league and kind of everyone knowing each other, everyone having group chats that are no longer active because they're in competition now. And that certainly applies to poaching players away too. You love to see it. It's beautiful. And we're talking about the sort of recruiting of these guys. And something that came up this past week was Mike Morreale, our boss man, the head of the league, being in the Ottawa Sun quoted talking about the future of the league and expansion to Montreal and what the future of the league looks like. And he was not so hesitant to be very optimistic about what this could be in terms of expansion for the league in the coming years. He mentioned 12 teams was kind of the goal coming in, and now he thinks 16 teams can be done quite easily given all the talent. I mean, Amy, that's got to be music to any Canadian basketball fans' ears. That's got to be music to, and look, nothing's confirmed. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Things can go awry at any time here. But my thinking is the league has survived basically unprecedented circumstances for a new league, like getting through a pandemic season like they did in their second year of existence, and now having a shortened season this year with just 14 games. I mean, it's kind of remarkable the league is where it is considering the circumstances. And so I'm thinking, yeah, I think it's kind of fair for Mike to be pretty optimistic about the future, considering what they've done through basically the most challenging start that any pro sports league could possibly imagine.
Yeah, I mean, and there's other things that make this league very unique, right? I mean, first of all, we mentioned the USports stuff. I think the Elam stuff, like that's exciting, right? We've seen some overtime games in the last couple of weeks here that haven't been the most exciting. So that's a draw.
The end of NBA games right now is driving me insane. It's taking like 30 minutes to play 2 minutes of game time. I know I sound like an old man who's like, basketball is too slow, but like, it's like, okay, give me the Elam ending, please. I miss it.
Well, listen, the Alabama UCLA overtime, like how much would you have just loved to have seen an Elam ending, right? But anyways, that's attractive. I think, Jevohn speaks about it, just being able to pay these guys and not having to relocate overseas and to Europe to be able to come up to Canada, do it in the summer. There's so many things that if you're a player, you're going to find attractive. And and we're looking at some of the places these guys are coming on. We're seeing a lot of guys that have G League experience now coming into the CEBL. And so, yeah, listen, if you can fill and keep your product high, which really seems to be the way it's looking right now, why wouldn't you want to expand? That's exciting. And I do think, yes, you look at what the league's overcome. And yeah, we had a season in the middle of a global pandemic. I mean, I think along with the NBA and the WNBA, the only 2 professional leagues or 3 professional leagues, right, in North America. And we were right there sharing the stories with the world as well. And yeah, big pat on the back, but also just, it's nice to see that they're not sitting at home patting themselves on the back still. It's constantly moving forward, evolving, growing while keeping that standard very high.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing that reflected in the the amount of talent they're able to attract to the league right now. And you mentioned Jevohn Shepherd out of Duke, who's just signed with the Niagara River Lions. He's not the only one, and not the only NCAA guy who's viewing the CEBL as a place to start a professional career and get things going before a potential move over to Europe during the upcoming regular calendar season. There's the Laurier recently signed as well. Jonah Matthews at a USC. You had Nick Ward, who we talked about with our friend Jevohn, signing with Ottawa today. Devontae Bandu as well, signing out of the NCAA. It's a very interesting wrinkle to the league, and we saw this happen with a couple guys last year, in particular Khalif Young and Cody John with the Hamilton Honey Badgers, guys who viewed it as like, oh no, this is just where I'm going to go start my professional career. It's not something to just keep fresh during the off season. This is me beginning my professional career in the CEBL, getting some run, building my profile before going and maybe getting a bigger contract overseas because of it. I wonder maybe you can kind of speak to that development, because honestly, that's not something I expected. I thought it would be a lot of, when the league first started, it'd be a lot of getting guys who are known commodities overseas, but seeing this as a new avenue for guys coming out of the NCAA, it's really, really exciting. And I think is only going to add to the talent pool of the league, because it's not just guys who are Canadians, it's American guys too. A lot of the imports, I think, are going to be coming from this avenue now going forward.
And you credit the front office of this league and the GMs because they're selling this product. Mm-hmm. So guys are buying it, but they're pitching it. I think it's perfect. Obviously, if you are at least in consideration to be drafted in the NBA, or other than that, why wouldn't you want to come right away to play pro? Mm-hmm. Make some money, but like you said, you get game tape, you get pro tape, you have agents saying, listen, probably not going to get drafted, but we might be able to get you in a camp.
You get those coveted sideline Amy Audibert interviews.
Oh, yes. Yes. Definitely make sure that's in the top 5. But seriously, I mean, it's kind of, they've created this just ideal situation for some of these guys. And the timing right now, we have to always talk about COVID because it's still here. Like we can't ignore that. So we're not exactly sure what happens in Europe. Yeah. Right. We saw that directly affect the G League this season. The G League talent this year was like skyrocket because a lot of those guys didn't go overseas. They weren't overseas. And so with a lot of uncertainty with Europe still right now, you look at college basketball seasons are over. Hey, let's get you in camp. Let's get you on the court. Let's get you on film playing the game at a professional level. I appreciate that the league is kind of running. They're taking that momentum and running with it. I think this summer season is going to be big to get that product continuing to grow and go up, the talent to go up, because that's how it happens, right? Yeah. You don't just have one down year and a great year. You just continue to get better and better and better and better. So we're seeing the signings. I get it. I think it's awesome.
It's exciting stuff, and I think that probably is good for our leadoff segment here, Amy. Let's now direct our attention towards Jevohn Shepherd, the GM of not the Hamilton Honey Badgers. I'm in Hamilton. I always have Honey Badgers on the brain. He's the GM of the Ottawa BlackJacks, a hated arch rival of the Hamilton Honey Badgers. He's also, of course, a former Canadian national teamer, former Michigan Wolverine, and a former kind of still CEBL broadcast man, which we love him for. Let's get to it. Jevohn Shepherd of the Ottawa BlackJacks coming up. All right, joining us now on the CEBL show is one of the voices of the CEBL Summer Series last year. Hopefully he's going to be involved in some way this year as well, but he's got a little bit going on his plate as the head boss man, head honcho, grand poobah, I guess that's the title, of the Ottawa BlackJacks. It's Jevohn Shepherd moving up in the world, man. How's it going?
It's good. It's good, man. And definitely, it's good to be back with the gang. We had a lot of fun this past summer in the summer series. So it's a reunion.
It is absolutely a reunion. It was super fun last year doing the games with you. Are you going to be doing the games this year at all, or are you just doing the front office thing?
I'll be doing some of the games probably. I hope more at the just studio capacity. Yeah. It'd be tough. It'd be conflicting to be calling.
We get you in for an Ottawa game. Yeah.
Ottawa. But no, it'll be fun. It was a great group. We had a great group over there, and Ottawa's been tremendous with in terms of their management and past players and players that are coming in. So I'm definitely excited about it, and then I'm gonna be feeding you guys information and poking you guys to make sure we're in your face.
That's what I'm going to ask. Is like, do we just have to go through like an official media request now to talk to the GM of the team?
No, we're family. We are family. I know this.
It's a single owner league, Amy. Yeah.
No, I know that grind, Amy. We have to sit on Zoom calls and wait for players, wait for front office. Nah, that's a text away now.
I get a laugh when the first person's like, "Oh, you can't talk to Jevohn." All right, got it.
Before we get into some more stuff here, Jevohn, should I guess have a moment of silence for your beloved Michigan Wolverines. You're brave enough to join us just 12 hours after they lost at the buzzer to UCLA.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna do it. Wasn't gonna do it, Sean.
I mean, I had to do it. We talked about the Zags with Sacre a couple weeks ago. We have to get the college thing woven in.
Going through it.
Has Sacre texted you about how his team's in the Final Four and yours is not?
Yet, and I'm glad we didn't take that bet because
he doesn't have reception. He doesn't have reception in the mountains. It's
that's
coming.
Right. He's going in his horse in Montana. Yeah, that's right. There's no service out there.
But no, they did. You know, the Wolverines did a really good job. Jevohn did a tremendous job with this group here, and I think, I'm proud of them. I think they showed that they were well-rounded. I think last night they just ran out of gas. They really couldn't get a bucket. I think they finished the game with 49 points. And that sometimes is college basketball, low-scoring games. But 49 points in today's basketball culture is pretty much unheard of. But it's, a talented group of guys. But you have to tip your hat to Gonzaga, man. They've done a tremendous job this year and just being that team undefeated. And just what I appreciate about that squad is that they just have fun playing together, and they've said it time and time again. So it'll be tough. I'm also excited that, Michigan has a Canadian, Caleb Houston, coming in next year, a McDonald's All-American. And I've seen him, really put in a body of work, and a tremendous kid, a great kid, great character kid, great family. So I'm going to really, really be following them now that I'm back home and just really being a part of that way.
Let me ask you this, Jevohn. You're watching obviously a lot of basketball as an analyst and as a GM. But when you're watching the NCAA tournament, do you now find yourself because you guys have a very interesting pull with the CEBL, where you've got these not necessarily like big time going to the NBA, but hey, come play pro ball right out of college. Like, are you kind of trying to identify who those potential players might be?
I think more than anything, we're trying to identify guys that want to be there, guys that believe in our philosophy, believe in the development that we have, or that we're putting together a development piece, more than just talent per se. Because if you're just looking at the NBA, the makeup of the NBA and pros all together, you have a lot of mid-major guys that are really successful, that are really having really good careers, and they just understand like the grind, the grunt work, and just the willingness to learn. So I think for us, that's big in our philosophy, is just creating that environment where, hey, everybody that's here is a part of developing, wanting to grow, and just build a family tree, more than, hey, we want to go and get, try and sign LeBron in his offseason or anything like that. So it's more that.
So you're not trying to lure Cade Cunningham to the Ottawa BlackJacks to get some seasoning in before he hits the pros, is what you're saying?
I'm gonna let him live. I'll let him live.
I do want to ask one though, Nick Ward, you signed a Spartan. I mean, how tough is it? Because I have a hard time talking about Florida State. I mean, I give you credit, right? Like
it was tough. It was tough. It was but he's a talented kid. I think I just slid the contract to Andy and just closed my eyes and let him sign off on it. But no, Nick he's a really big time talent. I think he's going to do a really good job in this league, just being that, like Amy, there hasn't been much bigs that dominate this league. It's guard oriented. I think he can come in and have some physicality, and just coming from that Michigan State, even though I hate to say it, but they're tough, man. Like, he brings that edge, he brings that size, he brings that athleticism. And he's a lefty. So it's funny. Andy and I have gone back and forth about that. Let's try and get as much left-handed players as possible, because they're unorthodox and they're tough to guard.
So Jevohn, this is something. I shouldn't
say he's a lefty, but he's ambidextrous.
Right. So Jevohn, this is a really interesting sort of time for the league. It seems like hype is kind of building. Mike Morreale's quoted in the Ottawa Sun earlier this week saying, 12 teams is what we wanted to expand to, but now we think we could do 16 kind of without breaking a sweat. And that suggests that there's interest in playing in the league from all corners. There's obviously a huge Canadian talent pool, but as we're talking about it, as some of the signings have shown, guys in the NCAA looking for their first pro job, maybe just sort of build up their sort of resume before going overseas for their first pro season in like the regular basketball calendar. It seems like it's becoming a real draw. So for you, obviously you have 10 roster spots, you have only a certain amount of space available, but are you finding that just the options and the number of guys who are potential, Ottawa BlackJacks is kind of growing? I know it's your first year on the job, but you've been in the league circles for 3 years. You've been talking to people, you've heard the buzz, you've heard people talk about, the league as a whole. Are you finding that the talent pool that you get to draw from is, a lot bigger than maybe it would have been a couple of years ago?
It's funny you say that because, in where we are right now, there's not as many jobs across Europe just because, the money's not, if you don't have people in stands, if you don't have money coming in, you don't have money going out.
Right.
So there's less signings of those big name guys abroad, as well as some of those leagues are folding. Some of those teams are folding. Some of the leagues have been canceled. Now, you factor that in with the fact that the G League was a shortened season. There's a lot of guys that don't have jobs right now,
right?
And didn't have jobs for the season. So the tough thing for us was that it was really hard to really set a time frame in when we wanted to have our roster complete by. And now we're finding we're almost down to our last 2 spots. And now some of these names that are coming out of the woodworks is like, whoa, if we had known this before, which is, there's 2 sides to it. It's unfortunate because there's guys that wanted to come on board and you're committed to them. And then you have these big name guys. But me personally, I say the agents are at fault here because you should have had, if we knew that, you're going to have a lot more players come available in this offseason or just based on the season period because of the limited jobs, then you should have known as well. But I think because the league is so young, so new, it wasn't as respected as it should have been, which has helped in a sense because now you're seeing some of those bigger name players. You're getting higher caliber talent come into the league, and I think it has a lot to do with the infrastructure of the league. The commissioner has done a great job, and they do an amazing job of all around talent, whether it be front office, whether it be broadcasting like yourself or ourselves rather, and just building the league up that way. So now there's more of an understanding. A lot of the agents that I've had conversations with over the last couple of weeks have said, hey, this is a no-brainer. Let's do it. Well, why wasn't it a no-brainer 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Right.
So I think everybody's growing up. They're not as naive anymore. And they realize that, hey, at the end of the day, when you do the numbers, these guys are actually making more money than they would be in the G League.
Right.
And some of them, some of them is comparable to what they're making overseas. Obviously, you're not going to compete with, the Moscow, CSKA Moscow and Milano that are paying guys 800,000 euro annually, but it's still comfortable enough in some capacities. So I think you're going to continue to see the league grow. And now that, it's going to be that premier summer league and in that window there where you're coming off of the winter season and right in between gearing up for a winter season. It's going to be perfect in prime time. And I like where it's headed.
I want to ask you this. You look at Ottawa, you guys have done a fantastic job building front office staff. And the first, it felt like when all the press releases were coming out with Ottawa, it was less about the roster and more about the support, but you're talking about how all these kind of things are happening later. Maybe that works to your advantage, but was that by design by you guys that you wanted to take care of that stuff first?
Yeah, definitely. Because we wanted to be able to have, get everybody on board and really come up with our fundamental principles, our philosophies. So, and that for me would take precedence in just identifying what do we want to do? Who are we? What's our culture? And then start to look at the players, because the reality is players are going to be there. There's millions of players that play basketball. So we're not going to be short of players ever. But you have to have that fundamental piece in place before moving forward. For me, it would have been tough to, go and sign 2-3 players and then come back, get an assistant GM, get your coach, and then everybody's thinking, okay, I don't want it to be a dictatorship. Let's everybody come together, bring our like minds together, and pool our thoughts and see where there's synergies amongst each other, and that's going to be the core of what we do.
So, Jevohn, one of those hires that you made was Charles Dubé-Bray to be the head coach of the team, taking over for Oz Genty, who was the coach in the first season of the team. Obviously, lots of changes in the front office. Of course, you taking over this year and everything as well. But what went into the hire of Charles? And for BlackJacks fans who maybe don't know him or what he's about, maybe give them a bit of a primer, a bit of a Charles Dubé-Bray 101, if you will.
Well, Amy, you're familiar with Coach Jama. He's on the bench with the Raptors right now. He was a head coach with Coach CDB with the 905, and he was, when I got the position, he's the first person that reached out for me and said, I got one for you. At first, I thought he was talking about a player. I was like, oh, maybe I'm gonna get I can get Kyle for a summer or something. Yeah. Maybe I can get Lowry, but no, he reached out, spoke about CDB and some other potentials, but he was high on CDB and just told me he's great. He's great with people, and really has a passion for the game. And then when we look deeper into it, he had experience in Europe. He had experience with the Spurs for a minute with their summer league team. And I think when you have somebody that is that diverse and has experience, in winning cultures and can bring that and pull that here, that was important for us. In just, okay, whoa, you were with the Spurs. That means you understand Coach's Pop's whole regime there and the infrastructure there. You were, a part of the Raptors championship run. Development league under Coach Jama and so forth. So that was a big piece. And then you have that European experience. Now you add in the fact that your native tongue is French. We're in the Ottawa-Gatineau region. That connects with the community. For us, again, a big part was being able to get out into the community and do just as much as we want to be successful on the court. We want somebody and staff that's going to get out there and say, hey, we're gonna go kiss babies and and so forth like that. And that's where that was. So it made it pretty easy. There was a lot of qualified applicants as well that, we're always going to be looking at. And for me, I think the biggest thing is just the relationship piece, man. I think there's a couple of people that, Amy, it's funny that we had, while we're doing the 905 games, there's a couple of coaches that I'd seen, played against. I'm like, whoa, I had your resume. We had an interview together. So it was nice. And then, even got some texts after and just laughing about it and saying like, hey, one coach reached out and said, what could I have done better? Or where could I have improved? And so forth like that. So it's an interesting dynamic to be in, and just to see the progress of all the coaches. It's exciting. It's unfortunate that there's only one head coach spot on the team. And it's always a tough decision to make, but really great people and really great relationships more than anything.
You got to get guys to send in demo tapes of them kissing babies and judge their form.
I got to call him Coach North Pop. Coach North Pop from now on. Hope he doesn't mind. He's awesome. So congratulations on that hire. But you said something, about when Jama called you. Now other coaches, it's going to be such a weird dynamic, like you said, because you were a player and everyone knows you as a player, and then you start broadcasting, so people kind of know you as that. Now, like, where's your aha moment when they're calling Jevohn as the GM to like kind of in some ways help me out, like at least give this guy a look, because that's kind of like give and take, right? Like it's
a weird dynamic, but I think what really helps is that a lot of these people we've had really good relationships with before, and a lot of them were a big help in my own respective career. So those calls are still, how can we help each other? Or, despite you bringing a player or a coach towards, in front of me, hey, how can I do my job better on both fronts? Like, I think Courtney Charles is a guy, like I spent 2 hours on the phone with him yesterday, and we're just going over just life, like his transition into his role now, his experiences, my experiences. And it's more like a friendship. And I always remember Courtney, when I came out of college, I had a workout with the Raptors, and I was this young, naive, immature kid, thinking like I had it made. I'm going to the NBA. I'm going to the league. I went to Michigan. Didn't play much, so I don't know where I got that, that thought from. But he called me to give me my time to be ready at the hotel. Mind you, I can't remember what hotel it was. We're staying at beautiful hotel downtown on the water. You can order whatever you want. Order everything. It's on the Raptors.
Sure, that's the Westin, the Harbor Front on the Westin.
It wasn't. That was I stayed there for another workout, but
okay.
But yeah, so I get on he gives me a call that night. I didn't know who it was at the time, and I said, "Yo," immediately, because it was actually my first workout, so I didn't know. My agent didn't. I should have known better, but my agent didn't school me on anything. And he ripped into me. He told me, like, "Look, son, you're a professional now. You need to conduct yourself that way and have a level of professionalism. Like, you need to answer your phone, Jevohn, like, hello, Jevohn Shepherd, boom, 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 boom." And I always remember that because it was life-changing for me. And just how I deal with people, how I approach every situation. Now it's more like everything is, we are one, you're a business, but two, you find a way to show your personality in that. And ever since then, like, Courtney Charles has been, my confidant and great in that sense. So I can't say enough about him as well.
Jevohn, you've also made some marquee signings on the player front, as we've talked about a little bit here. Number one that I want to talk about with you is a guy who, when we were calling the games last year in the summer series, he, at one point, while leading the Fraser Valley Bandits to a win, turned to the scorer's table, looked you dead in the eye, and did the Sam Cassell big balls thing.
Yeah.
Junior Cadogan. He is now a member of the Ottawa BlackJacks. He was an absolute delight last year for that surprising Bandits team that, of course, I famously picked to miss the playoffs in the summer series. They ended up going all the way to the final. Junior Cadogan was a huge part, and I am entirely unsurprised that you pursued him to play for the Ottawa BlackJacks. What went into that conversation? Why was that signing a top priority for you? And did you mess with Robert Sacre? Did you make any notes about stealing Cadogan away from him when he was hired by Fraser Valley?
You know what, Junior? I think when I got the job, I remember that exact moment you're speaking of. I said, I need that guy. He's a competitor. But no, like, Junior and I have played together with the national team, and I've seen him, from his days at Marquette. I've seen him in high school. I've seen him as a pro. And one thing that stuck out to me is that you can't ever substitute or replace that compete level from somebody. And that's what he has. Like, he's huge on that. He may not be the biggest. It's similar to Kyle. Like, he may not be the biggest. He may not be the strongest. He may not be the most athletic. But there's not going to be a bigger competitor on the floor when he's out there. So for me, that was, paramount to bring in a guy like that, not only for this season, but that's how you shift the culture, right? Like, that's a guy that can mentor the young guys around and just build. Like, he can change a whole game just on having that infectious personality. So that was huge for me there. I needed to pull the rug from under Sacre a bit. So I started there.
Great place to start. Let's just go. But I do want to ask you though, like, it is not a whole lot of teams yet. The league is still expanding. And so when you're in this GM role, and it is a business, right? It's people can leave the drama at the door. Yeah. This is professional sports and the guys know that. But do you kind of think that it at some point, this league's going to get to a point where there's a bit more maybe headbutting because you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, well, even Tyrell Green, right? Like, Tyrell Green comes from Guelph, and because there are only a handful of GMs, there's not that many teams, right? It's a bit more maybe personal, right? I don't know.
It can get there. It has a potential to get there because you have the 7 teams and
you all know each other, right?
We all know each other.
That's what I mean.
Jermaine is a friend. Kissy's a friend. Smalls is a friend. I've even noticed over the last couple of weeks, my texts from these guys have gone down. Like, we would just be talking NBA, like NBA banter back and forth. I don't see anybody on my phone, especially leading up to, the start of training camp, which is I can't even tell the last time I talked to Jermaine Anderson. And that's like my big brother. So, that competitive nature comes into play. But yeah, it's I think the league expanding is a good thing as well, because you get a lot more players opportunity, just as much as, the reality is there's not many roster spots. There's a lot of kids in Canada that play the game, and there's a lot of development that could happen within that time frame, right? So it just provides more opportunities for not just the players, but, coaches, support staff, broadcasting, and I just think for me it's a sensitive topic because, you know, we've always wanted to see basketball come to the place where it is right now. Like Amy, you went, you know, Miami, myself, Michigan, like people didn't have these opportunities before. I'm sure you're excited about, you know, where the game is growing, you know, both on the women and men's side. Like we haven't seen this, and there's so much growth to happen.
I just want to ask one more and then I'm done, because I know we're taking you're not the broadcaster, you're the GM today. So that means we get like probably 20 minutes less, right? But I want to ask you, because obviously the youth sport is, I think it's one of the most unique things about this league, right? Just being able to pull that in, and we know the draft is now kind of coming up and all that information's getting released now. So what are your kind of speak a bit about how, as a GM, you look at either whether they've just graduated or they still have a couple years of eligibility, but especially this year, how are you, the youth sport did not have a season, right, but how are you kind of evaluating and how do you kind of get your targets in line?
Well, that was a part of our building blocks early on, right? We brought on Willie Manigat, who is head coach at Brock. He's familiar with all of U-Sport, as well as we brought on James Drouin, who's a local guy, head coach at University of Ottawa, who's done a great job of just revamping that program. So I think the big part there was just having people that have knowledge in all realms, and those guys there have really taken, you know, the front seat, in the driver's seat rather, in how we're going to look, or what players we really need to be looking at, because there's so many good players, so many great players, that it's hard to evaluate, especially with not having a season. If it was in a perfect situation, we'd be able to go around and see some games, or just depending on where you are, just plant yourself and watch every team that comes in. But we don't have that luxury. So for us, we're fortunate enough to have two guys that have really great careers coaching at the U Sport level, just as much as we have some, you know, skill development, player development guys that are at the U Sport level who have, you know, a wide range of relationships across the board there. So that's really where, you know, we've pretty much given them the free rein there, and just to, you know, bring it to the table, and then we'll really chop it down and identify what we need, because those players as well, we want them to play. We want them to play because you think long term, that's how you groom, that's how you build the next generation. And there's also a loyalty piece to that as well. Like, hey, we're indebted to you. We're indebted to you. We're loyal to you, and we want to see you grow. You shouldn't just be. We don't want to look at you as just the youth sport player that's filling quota. You're part of what we're thinking long term.
Jevohn, man, thank you so much for taking the time. We know it's busy days with the season starting like 2 months from next week. That's crazy. And we know you're going to have your hands full. I look forward to seeing you again. Can't wait till we can be in the same room and you can stop using social distancing as a reason to duck me playing one-on-one when I would definitely beat you. It was lovely chatting with you, man. We'll catch up soon.
Likewise.